world is sitting at a very important, pivotal point. It really goes back to at least 1991, if not 1946, when America decided it wanted to dismember Russia to gain control of its huge natural resources. The uprising in Ukraine, which was engineered by Washington in 2014, led to NATO training the largest army in Europe of Ukrainians, some 450,000, armed and equipment by NATO, and built these massive fortifications around Donbass and Donetsk. Putin was forced to come into Ukraine in order to support the Russian people living in the Donbass region, because there was clear evidence that NATO, through the Ukrainian army, was about to launch a massive attack on the Donbass region. That's history, but it leads up to where we are today, because it's very clear that the war in Ukraine is being lost to NATO and Ukraine. And the attention is increasingly focusing on attacking Russia itself. And from all the information that we piece together, NATO's planned attacks probably started sometime in the second half of 2023, which led into a meeting that NATO held in a Baltic country in early May this year, where NATO told NATO governments to expect a war against Russia that NATO would be undertaking. So what we've seen in recent weeks has been a series of attacks on Russia. There is the incursion or invasion that Ukraine made into the Kursk Oblast region of Russia. Second, there have been continuous attacks on Russian infrastructure, particularly oil refineries, and also drone attacks on cities across Russia. The final attack was a missile attack on a military depot at Toropets. There are informed rumors that the attack was launched from a Baltic country where NATO exercises were taking place, and rumors that it was done by a British missile. So you have to think, is Putin going to retaliate, or is he going to continue to absorb the punches which NATO has been throwing at him? I think it is highly likely that a war will break out. Putin's retaliation will start with a massive missile, probably hypersonic missile, being launched across Ukraine. There's a very important meeting that takes place in Kazan, Russia, on the 22nd of October. It is a summit meeting of BRICS. And at that meeting, it is thought that a series of very important decisions will be made, everything from exchange rates to investment to currencies and so on. If those decisions were taken, then it would be an attack, as it were, on America and her allies' fiat system. In other words, if allowed to mature, it would place America's hegemony on full alert. I think there is a real risk that in Europe that some form of war will begin, if not before October, by the end of this year. My guess would be it will be before the BRICS summit meeting. The next part of the war scenario that we need to pay particular attention to is my region, the Middle East, as I live in Dubai. The assassination of Hassan Nasrallah is a real game changer, not just for the region, but globally. Nasrallah was perceived within the Muslim community, global community, as a symbol of change in how the world operates. He was also the spiritual and military leader of Hezbollah. There have been since that assassination, which included a large number of Hezbollah commanders, there's been great jubilation in Syria and in some Western capitals. Hezbollah has been defeated. We can install a puppet government in Beirut. We can take the war now into Iraq. We can regather the lands that we have lost, and that we can bring back the 60 to 80,000 Israelis who had to be relocated from the northern borders. There are several problems with this consensus view. The first is that Hezbollah had developed a command structure so that when commanders were killed, that their replacements had already been trained. So what's going on now is that Hezbollah is discussing how the penetration occurred and what their actions are going to be. But we now need to look and see what Iran might do now that their friend Nasrallah has been assassinated. People don't appreciate that the close relationship between Iran and Lebanon goes back to the 16th century. So the relationship between Tehran and Hezbollah is not a one-way relationship, it's a two-way relationship. So what's happened in Tehran is that the new president was trying to send olive branches to the West. And the West responded by saying, we guarantee that there will be a ceasefire in Gaza, and so on and so forth. Now the new president has admitted, quotes, I have been lied to. So all the reticence of Iran to retaliate against the killing of the Hamas leader in Tehran has now been buried. When and how Iran retaliates will be determined not only by what happens between Israel and Lebanon, but how his retaliation will fit in with what Putin is planning, because conversations between the two leaders are on a regular basis. So our own take is that a full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon has begun. Don't underestimate the ability of Hezbollah to launch cruise and ballistic missiles that can hit anywhere in Israel. Don't ignore the risk that at the appropriate moment, Iran will also come into assisting Hezbollah, and should, which seems likely, that Israel will take the war against Hezbollah into Syria, then that will automatically bring in Iran and Russia. I suspect that the clash between NATO and Russia will escalate, as I mentioned before, either before the end of this month or before the end of the year. In Lebanon, we may get a pause. The pause could last until March, April next year, with ongoing tit-for-tat between Israel and Hezbollah. But by the middle of next year, we're likely to see a major conflict unfold. This is why I wanted to focus on the geopolitical side before looking at financial markets, base metal markets, etc. In reality, these are the dominating themes that are going to influence everything. Can Russia afford a two-front war? I could turn it around. Can NATO afford a two-front war? Putin has just called up reservists. So when they've all been called up, they will have an operating army of 2.3 million troops. How many does America have? Under 500,000, I think. More importantly, Iran can take care of itself. It's been taken 20 years to prepare for an attack. Its missile launches are deeply embedded in the mountains across the country. On the first attack, they will mine the Hormuz Straits with explosives. So they are well prepared. So Russia's part of Iran's war will be a continuous supply, if needed, of equipment. Russia has been sending by plane and ship and train very sophisticated electronic equipment and probably other forms such as missiles. So effectively, Russia will be fighting on one front. They have troops in Syria. They may send additional troops. But again, I think it's very likely that Hezbollah is fully prepared and can take care of themselves. What you also see is that Syrian and Iraqi troops and paramilitary troops, numbering some 40,000, are close to the Israelis' borders, waiting for the go-ahead by Hezbollah to invade. The powers behind the White House throne do not want to see Trump getting into the White House. For them, he is an outsider, and he will try to destroy everything that the powers behind the throne have created for so many years, which has basically been the dismembering of Russia, the control of China's economy, and the use of Israel as their bridgehead into the Middle East. So if Trump was in, and if RFK became Attorney General, all of these guys would be out on the streets. So the bottom line is they are going to do whatever it takes to stop Trump from getting into the White House. Does that mean war? Maybe. Does it mean another attempt on Trump's life? Maybe. What I piece together from my friends, whoever is in the White House in January, there will be the equivalent of serious civil strife across the country because the losing party will not accept the winning party. So this again comes back to monetary and fiscal policy. Where are markets going? Whoever is the Democrat president is basically told what to do by the money bags behind the throne. I mean, if Harris is there, she's just a mouthpiece for the powers behind the throne. That's why if Trump gets in, he's an outsider, not part of the game, and that's what they fear.